Hey there, Wendy here with Jazzydoodledesigns, and today you guys voted for a color along in Kanoko Agusa's Symphony of Cute Animals. And we're going to be using our Brutfuner Square pencils. So the page I chose, due to Halloween, is this page. Well, pages. It's a 2-page spread. So we'll be doing both pages, and I'm kind of excited, so let's go. Hello! If you're just joining me and this is your first time here, welcome to Jazzydoodledesigns. My name's Wendy, and today the poll has chosen the Symphony of Cute Animals with Brutfuner Square pencils. Now, this is a 2-page spread, so I'm going to break it up into parts. I'm not really sure how many, but at least 2. If you've never watched a color along before, I do try to always have the color up on the page as we color. And that is Miss Ellie. She wanted to introduce herself to you as well. Just a couple of things before we get full into this. When you watch a color along by me, I try and put the little talking head lady in when I'm talking. That way, for those of you that only like the talking, you can easily find that. Also, I do all of my color alongs at 2 times speed. That way, people that like to watch them faster can speed them up. And those that like to watch in real time, you can adjust that in the settings and watch these at half speed, which would be real time. I find that's a nice solution because the color alongs don't end up being too long or too boring, and I find it easier to be able to talk for the shorter amounts of time. So to get started, on this one in particular, I'm going to go in, especially on this wall, I just want to lay down a little bit of color. Now, we are going to definitely darken up the wall. I just don't want to do it too soon because I want all of the elements that I put on the page to dictate, how dark I want that wall to be. I know I'm going to want it darker than this hay color, but not necessarily how dark and in what area. So we're just going to go through and lay down a base layer here of this hay. This is a color I will use quite a lot in this video. I will also put a snapshot in, I'll try and remember to do that, of all the colors that I use. Because I do use a fair amount of colors in this. It is a 2-page spread. Now, most of them are color combinations. So a lot of them are neutrals, like this hay color and various shades of brown. But also, for like the purple in the tablecloth, I use 3 different purples, a light, medium, and a dark. So even though there's a fair number of pencils, I tried not to add too many actual colors. I think there's 5 total. That'll kind of add to the cohesiveness of this 2-page spread. I want to apologize for the tardiness in this. I feel like this video has been very delayed. I cracked a tooth and it essentially died, and my face has been very swollen and it's been very painful. So I just haven't had what it takes to get this out. So I apologize for that. Some good news, I am by request now on Instagram. This will make it a little bit easier for you guys to I think a lot of people like to communicate via direct message on Instagram. They find that easier. So I am on Instagram. I'm on Pinterest. I'm on Facebook now. I doubt very seriously if I'll ever add Twitter, or what is it called now? X. It's just not really a platform that I like. So I don't think I'll be going in that direction. But I am finding Instagram to be very fun and a lot of inspiration. There are some amazing colorists out there, and it's been fun getting to see some of their work. So I would encourage you to please reach out if you're on Instagram and like me or follow me, I guess it is, and that way I can follow you back, because I'd really like to see what you're up to, and I would love to communicate with you more that way. So that's been a lot of fun. What else is new? You know, it snowed here over the weekend. We probably got 3 or 4 inches. I'm in Colorado, and it's kind of traditional around here that it will be beautiful weather until Halloween, and then it gets really crappy. Now, I think kids nowadays don't do a whole lot of trick-or-treating. It's more trunk-or-treat and whatnot. But our neighbors go all out, and our neighborhood has kind of changed a little bit. It used to be, I've been here 21 years, 22 years. And so I've really seen a big change. And we live on a cul-de-sac. And when I moved here, we were the young kids on the block. And now we're some of the older people on the block. A lot of new families have moved in and brought kids. And that's been kind of fun. I am curious to see how many more trick-or-treaters we get. In the 23 years that I've been here, I bet on average we get about 6 trick-or-treaters is all. And I mean, I live in a residential setting. It's just we are on a cul-de-sac, so I think that probably stops some people because I don't know. And like I said, it was a much older neighborhood for a long time. So back to the picture, I did put that piece of paper underneath for no other reason than when I'm coloring something that goes off the page like the spider web, I find it easier to have a piece of paper under to kind of catch my pencil. Also, my thought with this is I'm not being crazy thorough here, because I am going to be going over this with, I haven't quite decided, but probably stickles or oh, actually, I do know what I use. I use, like, it's called Nouveau, but it's the equivalent of Winkostella that just gives it like a shimmer, and then I put little tiny dollops of the stickles on it, just randomly. And so I'm not being crazy concerned with, my coverage and that kind of stuff. Don't get me wrong, you want to fill it up, but I don't think it's a huge issue, I guess is what I'm saying. Now, I know some people like to do their effects as they go, meaning white Posca pen or the shimmer or whatever. I do all of that at the end. That's just the way I like to do it. I like to get the bulk of the color down on the page, and then go in, and you'll see it in many things, like with the wall. When I do that fireplace, I put the first layer down, and then I'm going to go back later and put another layer of color on it and smooth it all out and blend it. Now, this is just probably maybe unique to me. I don't know. I know a lot of colorists just finish everything and just touch it once. I just find that I enjoy seeing how the overall effect is before I decide how dark I want something, or do I want to add another color to it. So that's just a personal choice or a stylized option that I do. Now, some things, for example, the little critters, I usually finish those all in one shot. But, in something like this tree branch or whatever. But, it's certainly up to you. You could, watch the overall effect and then see what you want to do. Now, with this tree, I start with black, and you will often see me do what I call underlayers or bases of color. I knew I want this tree to be more like a silhouette, but I don't want to just use black. I feel like when you just use black by itself, it's just not that interesting. And I wanted the tree to be brown, but I wanted it really dark. And so to work with the colors that I have, I decided to put black under this chicory coffee. And I think it worked really well. And we're just going to do both sides of the page exactly the same way. In general, because I'm right-handed, I do try to work on the left-hand side of the page and move across, but it just, I don't know. I just prefer to work. Some things I like to work all at once, like these trees. And the main reason is because sometimes I forget what I did, especially if, like in these trees, there's only two colors. But for example, when I do the banister or those little poles, I'm going to use, I think, 4 colors. And if I don't do both right away, I feel like you run the risk of them not looking the same, because let's face it, we all do things a little different each time we do them. If we do them back to back, I feel like we're more likely to do them exactly the same way. So since we have these 2 trees that are symmetrical, then I think it's important that they kind of match. In this particular page, sometimes that isn't the case. So I threw up a little note here because I color this little fox, and then when I go to color the tile, I realized that I completely missed his foot. So I would encourage you, when you do the hand here, just pop down and do the foot the same way. That way you've got all the same pencils out, and you don't have to try and remember what you did or find those pencils or what color did I use, that kind of thing. But basically I just go in and I add, a little bit of color here and a little color there, and each of these strokes that I'm using, I try to make it in the direction that the hair would grow. So this is not an area where you want to use a lot of circles or, go left to right, because the hair, grows, like on his head is growing, in the, okay, so I'm, spit it out, Wendy. You know what I'm trying to say. So each of the little marks that you make, you just want to go with the hair direction. All right, now that I spent like 6 minutes saying nothing, I apologize. It's a Monday and my face is still swollen. So I'm hopefully getting it fixed tomorrow. I have concerns because like my face is so swollen that it's swollen up into the eye and all the way down to the bottom of my jaw. And so I do have some concerns that he is going to not be able to work on me tomorrow, which would make me really sad because I want this over with. I'm adding this gray in here because I want some variance of color. I think it just makes it look a little more natural. Now, one thing I will say is that you could do as many layers as you want here. But when you do too many layers, what happens is your pencils really start to blend and you end up with one distinct color. So sharpen your pencils, make sure they're really sharp, and go ahead and just add those colors in. In those little flicking motions. Here I'm just adding white. I want to keep his little muzzle white, his ears white, and that little patch of hair. Sorry about the angle there. It's really hard because when I try and angle my camera differently to where I'm not directly up and down, it looks a little skewed. So there is no perfect way to do this. I'm just adding little variants of color. I did pull up a picture of a fox and take a look at it for reference. I decided his ears were just a hair too white, so I'm adding a little bit of this hay color just right on the edges of where the white is. And I like how he turned out. Now with the fox, you just want to add or with the tail, you just want to add some color here. And then once I have that orange color in, then I add the hay color. Now you can make the tail as dark or light as you want. And then I just flick in the black. Now it's important I'm going to point this out now so I don't forget later. At the end, and I did it off camera, I use a blending stick, the Caran d'Ache blender, and I blend out most of this picture. However, things like the fur and the tail, you definitely don't want to use a blender because right now you can see I have these little spikes of black that look like hairs. And if I used a blender pencil over this, it's going to blend them, it's going to do its job, and it's going to blend them, and it's not going to look like a tail anymore. Same with the little squirrels. I just want to point this out now in case I forget later. But basically here, we're just adding the cream color to his belly, and then this will be our lightest tone as far as the squirrel. Now, as you can see, I'm going over everything. This is kind of like his base underlayer. And I'm not really using the flicking motions. I'm just coloring it in normally, like you would color a wall or a sky. And then I'll go in with my other colors and put my flicking motions in. Now with this red, I'm not so much doing the flicking motions, but as you can see, I'm not going over the entire squirrel either. I'm adding it to where I feel like the shadows would be, kind of almost like shading with it. So like the big patch of his leg won't have it, but here on the crease it will. Kind of where you see a little bit of the dark lines that the artist gave us. Now here's where I start the flicking motions. Using the sepia tone, I'm going to start adding the hair. Concentrating on where the shadows would be, where I put the red. In these areas, I'm adding more color, so to speak. And while I'm flicking, I'm still adding a fair amount of color. It's not the same flicking as when I did the fox's tail. It's a little more concentrated than that, so they're closer together. My flicks are, they're not individual. It's almost like a, I don't know, they're more condensed. And it's at this point you look at it and go, what are you even doing, Wendy? But you have to trust in the process. I will say these Brutfuners, they're a lot like Prismacolor in the sense that they are a little bit crumbly at times. And for being an oily pencil, they're pretty soft. I like working with them. But I was surprised. I don't know if maybe my pencils were damaged in shipping, because I did have the same core breakage that you sometimes get with Prismas, where the tips, you go to use them and the tip just kind of falls out. So just adding a little bit more of that red. Not so much the flicking, just a little bit more, just adding in color. But you can see how that really filled out those flicks, and I still got the benefit of these individual flicks, right, with the sepia. But by having those red tones, it doesn't blend them together, and yet it kind of brings the whole squirrel together, if that makes sense. If I had filled it in with the sepia, all of those flicks would have blended together. Now once again, like the fox, I'm using this hay to kind of blend out the face, add a little more color to the belly, color up into the ears. And we got to give him a little nose. I think he turned out okay. Now right here, I'm adding a little bit of depth to those, to the clouds. Now, if you wanted to, you could use something like a white Prismacolor instead of the Brutfuner white. You would probably get a little whiter cloud. I just used the Brutfuner ones because I feel like I try and stick with just one pencil brand when I'm doing color alongs, but occasionally you just have to use the Prismacolor white. And I think this would be a good place to use it. But part of it is this is the first time I'm really using these pencils. So I'm wanting to see what they'll do. But I put those shadows in anywhere where you see the cloud kind of dip. I just kind of go with the dip. Now I'm going to use 4 different colors of blue, and I have no idea why my little card says black, because the number's right, 087, and the number on the pencil's right, 65. So I don't know. I will say these pencils, I'm very happy to have my numbering system, because when you look at this pencil in my hand, it's really dark, and it's hard to distinguish the dark blues, the dark black, the dark gray, and the dark purples. They all, like when they're laying on your table, it's a little harder to do, or harder to tell them apart. So I really like having the numbers so that I make sure I grab the right pencil every time. Now this is the darkest color, and as I work my way down, I am lightening my pencil pressure so that they'll blend better. So up at the top I was using a little firmer pressure, and then here as I go down I'm using a little bit lighter pressure. And I will go over everything, I think, twice. But you can see how much lighter that was there. Now next I go in with the number 64, and I'm starting a little darker. And then once again as I go lower, I lighten the pressure up a little bit once I get past this cloud. That's so that I can blend the next pencil. I don't know if you can tell, and then I'm trying to go into that initial color. See how I'm bringing that second pencil color up into that first one. This helps make a more seamless blend. And you can see how much lighter I'm using that color. You can see those little flicks there, or those little crumbles where my pencil broke. So we'll continue on doing the same thing with the blue, and then I'm going to go over the whole thing once again. So you may see on the channel some short tutorials. I will break out certain elements from this page into smaller tutorials. For example, the donuts and the cake that are on the table will be its own tutorial on how to color chocolate. I may do one like with the little critters, like with the fox or the squirrel, just because sometimes people are looking for just one element of a page. They don't necessarily want to color the page exactly the way I did, but they really like the way the squirrel turned out, or they want to see what the process is so that they can create something similar on their page. So don't be surprised if you see some things like that on the channel. I feel like I try and create my channel the way that I like to find stuff on YouTube. So, for example, almost all of my tutorials, my color alongs, are on one color along. I personally prefer this for two reasons. Number one, and this is the important one for me, I absolutely hate when an artist breaks it into 2 or 3 parts and I can't find the other parts. So I'm looking for, I watched part 1 and maybe I didn't, I don't do a lot of full color alongs where I color along everything exactly the way the artist did. Sometimes I do. But I have had it where I was looking for a couple of different elements in the page, and they have it broken into 3 parts, or 4 parts, or 6 parts. And then I'm like, where's the next part? And then I got to go wade through their videos. And if they're a beginning channel like mine, and there's like 100 videos, it's not that hard. But for channels that are larger, sometimes when you click out of one video and you go to find it in the other video, YouTube puts you back at their most recent videos, and you were looking for one that they did a year ago, and now you got to wade back through all the videos. So I think I am going to do a video on the channel explaining how to save a color along to a playlist in YouTube so that you can always find exactly where you left off. You don't have to, like, especially if it's a long video, like a 3-hour video, and you're a third of the way through. I will show you how to save it in your playlist so it will pick up exactly where you left off. And I think that that can be really helpful. And I know for myself, dealing with, like, for example, my mom or other people that maybe aren't as tech savvy, they don't understand all the options of controlling the speed and control how to save a video, how, maybe you're on your lunch hour and you see a video and you're like, oh, I'd really like to watch that, but I've only got 5 or 10 minutes left of my lunch. I can show you how to save those to watch it later. And I can show you how to create different playlists so you know if it's a watch later or a color along or whatever it is, that so that you can easily find what you're looking for. So I think I'm going to be doing a video on that, because when I learned those things, it made it really helpful for me. I'm probably not as tech savvy as my kids, just by virtue of my kids grew up, well, my kids were on the cusp of growing up with this technology, whereas I definitely wasn't. The internet wasn't even around. The internet was born after me, which makes me feel incredibly old. But at the same time, learning some of these things can be very helpful. So I think I'm going to do a video on that. Let me know in the comments if you think that that would be helpful to you. Okay, so for this one, I actually did speed this up to 4 times, just simply because it is exactly the same as the last segment. So I will catch up with you in a couple of minutes. Okay, So next step with these bats, I am going to base their underlayer with this purple color. Now you don't have to do this. You could just color them gray or color them black. But I kind of like the look of the purple underneath because when I go over it with the next color, that purple still kind of shines through a little bit. And it's going to help tie in the bats to the tablecloth. So as you can see, I'm not getting every single little piece of the bat. In fact, I like to keep just a little bit of white by the edges a little bit. Now don't forget that little bat off to the left, or otherwise you're going to have to go back like I do later on. You might as well do it while you got all the pencils out, right? See, once again, this pencil broke. And I'm not sure why it's doing that. Now later on in the color along, I will go back over these with black, just to darken them up. But like I said, I like to have options. And I'm going a little bit darker up at the top and a little lighter at the bottom. Not ridiculously so, but a little bit. I just think it adds a little visual interest. So let's see, what else is going on? So we talked about the snow and how cold it got this weekend. It was like a high of 27. I'm not really sure I'm ready for winter. We'll see what kind of winter we get. Last year was pretty mild. I have a feeling we might get a little more this year. So next up is our owl, and I did put all of these picture colors out so that you would know what colors are going to be in the owl, and then I'm going to stack them all up because they were kind of in the way. But you could certainly do this owl in a lot of different colors, or all the same color. You could have used browns. I was trying to use colors that would tie in with the rest of the picture. He ends up being a little bright maybe. But that's okay because this is a little critter page. And I'm just going into those the darker areas and adding in little kind of splotches of color. You know how you've seen, like, birds often have those little patches of color? That's kind of what I was going for here. Next up is some of this raw sienna, which is kind of a redder tone, and it's what I used in the fox and in the squirrel. So once again, kind of using similar colors to just make everything feel a little cohesive. Now here, for whatever reason, I had the wrong card out. So if you ever see these orange cards pop up, and maybe the other cards on there too, definitely go with the orange card because that meant Wendy had a little boo-boo. I felt like he turned out okay. Overall, I'm happy with this page. I hope you guys are too. I'm assuming if you've made it this far into the color along, you saw the final picture and have chosen to follow me on this journey. I just think these Japanese coloring books, I am just obsessed right now. I just think they're so stinking cute. Now, this one's been around for quite a while, and quite honestly, this is one of the ones that will probably be on my list, my goal list to complete the entire book. Now, I'm not going to make any lofty promises today that we'll do this all, in 1 year even. I don't know, because there's so many good coloring books out there. Rita Berman's Africa book just came out, and I'm excited to work in that one because I love Rita Berman. Hannah Carlson, I haven't colored in her new book yet. I am going to be doing a buddy color with a new friend that I found via Instagram from France. So we're going to do a buddy color in the Atlantis book. And so that will be next month. Now here, as I'm starting to work on this gold frame, I am putting in this really pale yellow, and I'm not putting it everywhere because I want the yellow to vary throughout the frame, because it does in nature. Unless it's man-made, manufactured, which I guess these would be. But generally speaking, the light plays on it differently and you will get different colors. Now, I probably should have sharpened my pencil, and it does look like I'm going a lot faster there. I finally got smart and sharpened my pencil a little bit. But I'm just kind of going around the edges there. And I had the white card out. I don't know why. Obviously, this isn't a white pencil. But I'm just going in and adding a little bit of brown tones that'll warm up that frame and make it more golden and less yellow. So going around the edges and then slowly working my way to where I have a highlight of that light yellow in the center. This will give it a little bit of a roundness look. You know what I'm talking about when I say roundness, like the frame's kind of bulging out towards us. That's the look I'm going for. So I'm kind of smoothing that out with this Thai curry color. I use this color a lot in this color along, probably more than any other color. Now, this yellow definitely brightened it up a lot. In retrospect, I don't know, hay might have been a little better color. I wish that these pencils had a cream color. They don't. I wish they did. I don't know what I was doing with this mirror or with this frame, but all of my pencil, they're all out of the frame. I must have been in a zone and just not paying any attention whatsoever. But I feel like these browner tones give it a more antiqued look. They make the frame look a little older. I have no means perfected my gold in things like this. It's still a work in process for sure. I feel like I have the concept down and not the execution. Does that make sense? I think too often that's how it is with art. First you got to learn the concept, and then you got to perfect the actual, laying down of colors. I feel like, looking at it now with the voiceover, I feel like it's a little too uniform in terms of light and shadow. That is something that I would like to, I don't know, spend more time learning. I think we all do. We all see those pictures where people have that down, and you can really tell a difference when a picture is accurate with those things. But I'm not going to beat myself up over it. Overall, I think that when you look at this, it reads gold, and, I don't think there's any adult coloring police out there that are going to come and arrest me. So, we keep practicing and keep learning. And that's what I encourage you guys to do too. Because I think people get really afraid to try new things. Here I felt like I had gotten a little too dark in some areas, so I went in with my eraser and just kind of added that highlight back in. And here I'm just kind of adding a little more shadow or depth. But anyway, back to what I was saying. I think we're too hard on ourselves. I see people, they buy these books and they're so afraid of ruining them. And there's a lot to be said for that, because it's human nature, for one. So this is not me judging, because I've done it too. But at the same time, it's like that's how you improve and that's how you grow. And in most of our situations, not everyone, I understand, but a lot of the women and men that I see could get another book. And if you can afford to do that, and it's your favoriteest book and it's the most beautiful book ever, ask for it for Christmas. Christmas is coming up. Ask for another copy. And then that way you have your practice book, and then once you have practiced and feel more confident, then you have another book. Sometimes just having that other book is a peace of mind that you have options. For books like Rita Berman's and some of the smaller books, it doesn't really work for books like this because they're too big. You can photocopy. You can take pictures and print them. Here I just added some diagonal lines to indicate that this is more like a mirror, and or it has some background. I felt like it was busy enough. I didn't really want to add a full background per se. So here's me going back in over the bats. And once again, not over the entire bat, but just adding some dark areas here and there. I would say over 2/3, but leaving little patches of that purple to really pop through. Sometimes, if I'm really stuck on something, let's say that I really don't know how to, like that owl, right? Let's say that I was just really stymied and I didn't know what to do and I was afraid of messing it up. Sometimes I will photocopy just that segment. So just stick the book in to where it photocopies that, and I don't even have the full picture, and then I can kind of practice on that. So that is an option for you as well. And the artist doesn't really care if you do that because that's for your own personal use, right? The author cares if you're photocopying things and then distributing them on Pinterest or Etsy or sharing with your whole neighborhood, because that's how they make their living. Is they want, if you and your 6 friends color this page, that's 6 books that she or he would have sold. So that's where they have the problem. So don't be afraid of maybe photocopying a segment and testing out your color combo, or testing out how it looks to do a certain thing. Like with that owl, we could have tested out maybe putting some green or blue in the background instead of the diagonal stripes. And that might have been an option. But I think the bigger key is, and I tell myself this all the time, is don't take yourself so seriously. For me, I put a lot of pressure on myself because I want to make sure that the color alongs that I do, people want to color along. They don't look at that and go, well, I don't like any of your color choices. Why would I want to color along with you? Or I don't like how it turned out. And that was a big fear I had when I started my channel, because I don't have all the answers and I don't have this all perfected. I am learning alongside of you guys, and while I feel like in some ways I had a jump start because I've been crafting for a long time and I have some skills when it comes to color, doesn't necessarily mean that I've got it all figured out. I feel like with every picture that I do, I improve, and every Instagram picture that I look of somebody else, I get ideas and I say, oh, wow, I love the way they did that sky in the Hannah Carlson book, and then I apply that concept to a Rita Berman book, or, in other words, not copy their image per se. Now, sometimes I think it's important that you can copy exactly what you see. The key is then you don't go post it as your own, and you make sure you give lots and lots of credit if you borrow heavily from an artist, and make sure that it's not buried in the fine print at the bottom, that you're very upfront about it, because that artist worked hard to develop that. Now, personally, if you want to color exactly what I've colored and then post it in the coloring groups, all I ask is that you say, I followed a color along by Jazzydoodledesigns. I think that's more than enough for me personally, because that's what I do these color alongs for, is I want you to color along with me. I want you to copy me. I want you to learn something from me. And I would love to see it. And I would love to see if you colored some things the same and some things different. I'm okay with that too. But, I mean, to me, that's the purpose of color alongs. So don't misunderstand what I'm saying. So I felt like I didn't want to introduce yet another green. Oh, excuse me. I didn't want to introduce another green. So what I did was I put the darker colors behind it and then added the lighter color on top, and I felt like that added the olivey tone that I was looking for. Here I'm just adding some little blobs of this silver gray to the white to make it look like, you know, like there was texture there. Next up, I'm going to do these little pumpkins on the side. Just using a variety of the oranges. But really, this could be any color combination of pumpkins that you want. That's the nice thing about pumpkins. They come in a variety of oranges, browns, even green and yellows. So you can really just do whatever makes you happy here. I wanted to add a little bit of that, almost like a terracotta color. But they don't really have a terracotta color, so I felt like that mink on top of the already orange worked pretty well. Then once again, adding that brown and then the green over the top. Just added just a hint of green there. Now, I don't know what I was doing here. I mean, technically it's in camera, but it could have been more in the center. So sorry about that. I gotta say, sometimes it can be very difficult when you're coloring because the whole point of coloring is it takes us to that zone, right? Where we just get to where we're not thinking about anything. And this is why people with pain color. This is why people with anxiety color. This is what makes coloring so powerful. But as a YouTuber, it can be a little annoying because I get in that zone and then I lose sight of the fact that that's not in the middle of the page, or the screen where you would want to be looking. Instead, I'm constantly feeling like I'm coloring off camera when very little is technically off camera here, but so please forgive me. Luckily, we're only coloring pumpkins, not in anything with, some detail that you're sadly missing. It's kind of interesting how that pumpkin is. I feel like, is that two pumpkins stacked on each other? Or what's going on there? Okay, so let's color our other little squirrel. It's going to be very similar, but I wanted this one to be a little bit different color. So I'm not going to have the exact same color choices. In some ways, they will be similar. So like the hay on the belly and the face, I do that, and the ears. But I'm not going to add in the darker tones that we did with the other one. So here you can see I go in with the hay all over the body as well. Much like I did with, I think the other one we used that Thai curry. So here I chose more of some gray tones instead of the brown tones. I just wanted a little bit of variance. There's nothing wrong with coloring them the exact same way. So if you prefer one of these squirrels over the other one, you could make them both look the same. I just like to tell you guys why I do the things that I do. I feel like this khaki is a really nice French gray, and it has those warmer brown tones to it. It's just not the yellow brown. It's more of a gray brown. So here I'm just adding in those little flicks, going with the hair direction. This is exactly what we did on the first squirrel using sepia. Instead, I'm using this vintage khaki. Once again, probably could have benefited from sharpening my pencil. Flicks are always better with a sharp pencil. So now here I'm going to add some sepia in, but you can tell that this is more of, I don't have that red undertone that we did in the other squirrel. We have that gray undertone. But they're not going to be wildly different because they both have hay in them, they both have sepia in them. It's just the undertone of the squirrel that's a little different. So they look different, but it isn't like you don't look at this and think they're totally different species. If that makes sense at all. I would really like to hear from you guys in the comments too. So, generally speaking, I like to post my major content on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. I feel like, and by major content, I mean something like a color along. If I'm doing a flip through, I feel like even if I was chatty Cathy, it's probably going to be like a 15-minute video, which I think anyone can squeeze into just about any day. Whereas I feel like color alongs are more of a weekend commitment. Do you guys agree with my line of thought? Or do you prefer that they come out, let's say, like on a Thursday, so that you can watch them and then color along with them on the weekend? I just don't know how other people do, like, I don't know how. Tell me your thoughts on color alongs, I guess is what I'm getting at. So in the end, I decided I wanted a little bit of red tone. So I went ahead and added some raw sienna here. I don't remember doing this, so I'm kind of surprised. I thought I kept it much lighter, but it could have been that I kept it lighter and then spent the night and then came back and went, no, not sure. But any rate, I do add some more of that red tone. I do feel like this little guy is a little bit lighter overall, but I do feel like he has a lot more gray tones because I'm adding even in more gray tones here. So back to my question. YouTube likes that if I put out a video, the way they determine how many people see that video is they put it out to my members, and in the first hour, if it gets a lot of interaction from the members, then they start, and by members I mean subscribers. So when they put it out to the subscribers, if the subscribers like it and comment or share it or save it or interact with it in some way, then YouTube goes, hey, this video is worth showing other people, and they show it to more people. So what I don't want to do is put these videos out like on Tuesday and nobody watches it, and so then YouTube goes, oh, nobody likes this video, and they don't show the video as much. and so it doesn't get as much traction. And I mean this for both to subscribers as well as other non-subscribers. And so I'm trying to figure out the best time to put these out that give you guys value, but also so that they don't end up in the archives. Because it's amazing. Sometimes I will hit the lottery and I'll put out a video that's just at the right time in people's worlds, and they will watch it, respond, whatever. And the next thing I know, it has a ton of views. And so I'm just trying to figure out how to work it to where it brings value to you as well. Because there's nothing helpful if, I'm assuming that people have more time on the weekend to watch, but maybe that's not the case. Maybe you guys have special days. So let me know in the comments your thoughts on that. As I grow the channel, I'm always striving to improve it and to be a channel that you guys look forward to posts from me. They feel good when they pop up on your screen, and the timing is good. People have requested that I don't do as much music in my videos. Like if I'm doing a flip through, they would prefer just talking, no, even though my music was always very, very low, some people struggled with that. So I'm happy to make those kind of adjustments. There are times, like when we were doing the sky, where I was like, I can't really add anything of value, so I might as well just put a little bit of music to it. And that's why I have the little talking head chick, so that you know, hey, she's talking. So if you ever pop in and that little head's up, it just means that there's a little bit of a pause, not enough to put a song. Now this little cat, I basically just used the grays and the black on the darkest little patches of color, and then the rest of the cat is going to be quote unquote white, which means he's going to read gray, because I don't know, maybe you read it as white. To me, she looks gray to me. But overall, I like very much how she turned out. Once again, I go in with black as a base. I wanted this purple to be much darker than the purples that were available to me. I also wanted to use the same purples here as I'm going to use on the tablecloth on the other page. And so I want them to have the same purples. But I wanted the creases to be darker. So I'm using black to add those shadows before I start. So where the cloak would fold in on itself, that's where I'm adding these darker tones, if that makes sense. And then I'll go in with the darkest purple, or I think I start with the lightest and work my way to dark again. But anywhere there's like creases, anywhere I feel like there would be shadows, sometimes it's where the artist put their lines. Sometimes it's just wherever I think there should be one. So yeah, so this is the lightest purple. And I'm kind of blocking those in. You can see how far back on the pencil I'm holding. I want this to be very light to begin with, because when I'm working with things like shadows and folds and stuff like that, I want the option to see how it turns out and to be able to adjust that, whether that means erasing it or whether that means adding a darker color over the top. That's why I work so far back on the pencil to make sure it's light. This is the next lightest, so the medium purple. I'm going up over the black because I really don't want that black to remain, quote, black. I want, when you look at it, that looks dark purple. So it starts with this color, and then I will go over it again with my darkest purple as well. But you can even see with this one how that black is now becoming just a really, really dark purple. And I'm going right over the side of where I've put that black. Now I kind of forgot to put the black in the inside of that hood, so I will go back and do that. But I should have done that earlier. But I'm just kind of extending that black out a little bit. And just looking at everything and seeing, okay, am I liking this? I'm just... And here I come in with that darkest color. Now this purple is a little more blue purple. And then once I've done this, you just basically repeat your steps, working your way back down. You just want to make sure that you keep some highlighted areas. You want some areas to be light as well. So when you're going over these areas, even though I go over all of them, I'm going over them very, very lightly because I still want them to be a much lighter purple. Now you could have left them white if you like a much more stark contrast, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because this is more of a blue purple, I do go over almost everything with it because that other purple is more red purple. That way it'll be more uniform in color or in tone, however you want to say it. So I'm working my way back down to the light colors again, blending things out. Just making sure everything's colored and smooth. I missed that little segment, so I swapped out for a little darker purple there. Now that I have it completely colored. Now I can go back in, deepen up my tones, and really decide, where I want my shadows and my highlights. I wanted this to be a much darker purple. I actually liked it before I started putting in this black. So you could leave it like that if you like. I just felt the need that I wanted it a little darker. Just a little bit of a personal artistic choice, so to speak. But there was absolutely nothing wrong with the way it was. Sometimes I think it's worth taking a chance on things. So this is the darkest purple, and I'm just blending that black back out. Just making sure things are kind of smooth. Just seeing how I like it. Now with this broom, I have a lot of orange on the right hand side of the page and not a lot on this left hand side. So I am going to add in a variety of colors, including some oranges, into this broom instead of just making it all this, I could have made it all these yellower tones, right? Because that's what a lot of brooms are. They're pretty much the same color, right? But I wanted it to be a little bit brighter and have some orange tones in it to kind of tie it into the page to the right. Plus, I just think it's more interesting than if all of these were the exact same brown or yellow or whatever color, beige. Now I need to add some dark, so I think I go with sepia here. Oh no, I'm going to add some yellow. It's interesting to me, these Brutfuner Squares, this is why I swatch everything. That pencil in my hand looks like it would be orange, but look how yellow it really is. And that's another reason why I like the number system, because I could very easily think that this is my quote-unquote orange pencil. And look how dark that pencil looks in my hand compared to what it actually swatches out. They're nothing alike at all. So here's where I'm going to bring in some of that orange. See, and this orange looks like it would be a lot darker than what it actually is. So on the little goose, I'm not going to do much more than just put in little indicators of shadow, because geese are white. So I use this gray just to put in my shadow forms, and then the rest of it I will go over in white And then of course do, you know, his little legs and beak and whatnot in the orange colors. These little critters are just so cute. Okay, next up is we're going to go in with some yellows, some oranges. Now I put the darker color oranges along the sides because that's what's going to add a little bit of roundness to the legs. I decided I wanted his tongue to be that yellow color too. I'm going to go in with the actual orange color. Keeping it pretty simple here. Okay, so we're going in with our green. And much like I did the cape, you know, we're gonna add our light tones, and then we'll go in with our darker tones, adding in the shadows and whatnot. Now, I could have started with the darkest color. Here I went in with the light, and then now I'm adding in those darker tones. The artist doesn't have very many lines here to indicate, you know, creases or whatnot, so I just put in a few myself. And by going in with this middle tone, if I don't like where I've put the crease, I can just add another layer. So that's part of why I did it this way. I'm just adding a little bit of stripes here on the collar for interest. And this is with the darkest green. Now, using my middle tone as the guide for where to put these dark tones, I can now add them with a lot more confidence. Had I went in with this dark tone first, if I didn't like it, I was kind of stuck with it. But by doing it this way, I can always change things. Now, I don't know that where I put the one on the left is perfect, but I think it adds a little bit of a visual interest. Now I'm going to put these darker tones on the sides of the hat, leaving that center part as our highlight. And I decided I wanted to go even one step darker. So I pick yet a darker green. And I like the effects of that. I feel like that is more the look I was going for. Now these same greens I'm going to use on the other side, on the other page. The other goose will have the same green, as well as like the slushy color and whatnot. And by keeping the colors consistent throughout the page, it'll add a little bit of cohesiveness to our overall page, which is nice because in a 2-page spread with this many elements, it's very easy for the eye to be really overwhelmed and just, you know, when I used to scrapbook, they called it a sticker sneeze. It's like where there was just these random colors all over, and your eye didn't really know, there was no focal point. This is the same colors that I used in his legs and his beak. I'm going to use in this little tie and on his hat. These will also be the same oranges that I've been using for the pumpkins and that I will use for the jack-o'-lantern punch bowl. Once again, tying the left hand side of the page to the right hand side of the page. Okay, so now we're going to tackle this fireplace. Or, oh, the banisters first. And all of my cards are out of camera, and so just look for the orange block on the right to tell you what color we're using. So I'm going to set this to music because there really isn't a whole lot to say, and there's two segments of banisters, and I will catch you in a minute. Okay, so next up is this fireplace. So I'm going in, the idea being that I'm going to use the lightest shade, which is the bone brown, here in the center. And then as I do each element, so like I'll use the Thai curry around these parts, and then leading up into the sepia, so that I have varying shades of brown. And I will do entirely the entire fireplace here. But then at the very end, when I have my picture colored, I'm going to go over it again. So just know that because you may think, well, why are you leaving it when it doesn't look great, right? I don't know if that makes sense, but I often work this way. And so I encourage you, if you follow my color alongs, always take a look at what the finished product looks like, and then you can see where I'm going. Because I feel like I like to leave myself options, because let's say that as I work on this page, I feel like this page is becoming too dark, then I have the option to burnish it all in a lighter tone, like maybe the hay color, or maybe the bone broth, or the bone broth, bone brown. Whereas if I feel like the page overall is too light, then I can go in with a darker color. I could even add some chicory coffee or another darker brown. So that's why I do it that way. It's all in how you like to work, I guess, because, maybe it's experience. I do know if you work with the same pencils all the time. So some artists, very much like Chris Chang, she only uses Prismacolor. And while my other channels will concentrate on one particular brand of color, this is how you learn those colored pencils. And I highly encourage you to do that if you're, not a YouTube channel. If you're just coloring on your own, when you do that, you really master those pencils and you understand how they work together and what combinations work together and what you like. But because I'm using whatever colored pencils you guys choose and whatever medium you choose, so sometimes you guys will choose Inktense or Inktense and Prismacolor, Inktense and Polychromos, or whatever. I am always challenging myself. This is the very first time I've used these pencils, so I'm not really sure how they work together or what combinations work well together. I have a pretty decent understanding at this point, having worked with them. But it is something that because I don't use it, because I haven't used them a lot, I'm a little more conservative in how I go about coloring and what I decide I want to do overall. Like at this point, I'm like, do I just want this to be darker here, like a shadowy type of area down at the bottom, and work my way up? Or do I want this sepia tone, to very lightly go over everything? So those are the decisions that I'm making, and by stopping at this point and then stepping back and looking, I can decide. And here I made the decision, I think I want to bring it all the way up. And then I realized that this area between her antennas was actually part of the fireplace. So that's often a challenge, is trying to figure out what is this piece. Now, I'm not saying you have to color that way at all. Color the way that gives you joy, and color the way that feels best to you. Some people just want to only color the fireplace, color it to perfection, and then move on. And I'm okay with that too. I just feel like because it's a 2-page spread, I want the overall look of it to fit together as a unit. So that's why I'm a little more cautious. So basically what I've done here is each color that I colored initially, I stepped up one step darker and kind of went over it lightly with the darker pencil. So where I had the Thai curry, now I'm going over it with sepia. I'm darkening up the outer frame of it, and then in the middle where I had that bone brown, I will be going over that with Thai curry. I hope that makes sense. See, that's where that Thai curry was right there in that little frame. Now I'm going over it with the sepia. But by adding the underlayer of the lighter color, it just creates more depth of color, and that the warm highlight kind of pops through. And see this, the combination of the bone brown and the Thai curry created a little warmer brown than if I would have just went in with Thai curry. So overall, I just wanted it to be a little bit darker and richer than what it was. And then when I blend this out at the very end too, using a blending stick, it will kind of smooth some of these lines. I will say this paper, I find the paper in this book to be challenging to work on. It's very smooth. And generally, I don't know. These pencils, I'll be coloring away and it'll be coloring really smooth, and then it'll kind of just make this weird mark. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I do find this paper a little challenging. On the next page that I color, I may opt to spray it with a workable fixative before I start. I do that when I work in the Thomas Kincaid Disney book, and I really feel like it helps so much that I actually took the time one day to literally spray every single page in the book so that I didn't have to do it every time I wanted to work in the book. And because it's just, you know how it is. When you want to color, you want to color. You don't want to be setting up a box and going outside and spraying the workable fixative. So I spent I don't know, it took me probably close to an hour, but I would spray a page, let it wait for 30-45 seconds to dry, and spray it again, wait for it to dry, then go to the next page, because I think I did 2 sprays per page. but I find that it adds just a little bit of tooth, and I find it easier to work with. And so I may try that in this book, because I do find this paper a little challenging to work on. So I did speed up this part with the banister to 4 times speed, just simply because this is our second essentially identical element. And I don't want to bore you, and this is already a long video. But we're nearing the end of part 1. Thank you so much for joining me today, and look for part 2 soon. Also, I will be throwing up a poll on the channel for our next color along, so look for that. That should be coming soon, and I will see you on the next one. Thank you for watching another video from Jazzydoodledesigns. If you enjoy adult coloring content, please consider subscribing. You can now find me on Instagram and Facebook as well. I welcome all comments and suggestions. Don't forget to like the video before you go. And until next time, take care.